David Banner, another artist that you worked with.
Yeah.
How did y'all link up?
He actually hitchhiked to New York. He was in a bad record deal with Penalty Records. He was frustrated, and he hitchhiked from Louisiana. I think he was going to school at Southern. So he hitchhiked from Southern up to my apartment in New York. I had just finished the deal with Cash Money.
Yeah.
I had just done their deal at Universal. And he showed up on my doorstep and he said, I need help. And that was how we met. You know, he showed up in a straw hat and overalls with no shirt on underneath. And he had a revolver tucked in his overalls. And he was just so country, standing on my doorstep in Soho.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who are you? And he's like, I'm part of a group called Crooked Letters. And I'm like, okay, well, it was late in the day. I'm like, well, come back tomorrow.
That's right.
You know, like I've got meetings and I've got some stuff to do. But if you come back first thing in the morning, you know, we'll meet. I didn't know that he didn't have a place to stay. So he went and stayed in the park overnight, which is just brave as fuck, right, in New York City. And he was back on my doorstep at like 8:15 in the morning, and I'm not an 8:15 kind of girl. So he woke me up the next morning, and he came back in, and I'm like, you know, this is kind of early. What are you doing here? And he's like, well, I didn't really have a place to stay, and I couldn't really kill time because people were starting to come into the park. I'm like, you stayed in the park overnight? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, no, you're going to stay here. Like, you don't have to stay in the park. And then that night turned into another night, which turned into another night, which turned into 6 to 9 months. And he just, you know, he was just like, you know, he's sleeping on my couch. He was just part of the furniture at that point, you know. And I enjoyed having him there. But it got to a point where he needed to go back into the South and start rebuilding his career. And that's what he did. And then from there, we did a deal for him at Universal through Steve Rifkin. And it was, for me, I liked it more than the Cash Money deal. I was more proud of that deal. Even though I'm more famous for the Cash Money deal, I was more proud of that deal because it gave him, he was signed to Universal through Rifkin, SRC, but it gave him the right to put out his music independently. So we could release music through Selecto Hits in the down periods when Universal was focusing on other projects and other artists. And for me, that was just incredible.
When it came to getting artists their deals and seeing that money coming in, how did that impact the artists, and how did you feel about it?
It changed their lives, and it still does today. Like, I'm still excited. Whenever I can help somebody become a millionaire, I get excited. And the last 2 artists that I've worked with that have really made it big, both Trouble and Little Donald, are both millionaires today.
Come on now.
And when I met both of them, they were dead broke. I remember giving Trouble money out of my own wallet so he could get out of the parking garage where we met.
I'd have been there, so I feel you.
And I remember Donald, when I first met him, he was driving his girl's car. Like, you know, and I remember when we first put out Do Better, I helped him find, a rental house where he could live. And I remember the look on his face when he realized that that was his home, that he didn't just have to go and stay at different women's houses in order to have a place to live. I remember when he bought his first bed and he said to me, you know, with a tear, like, this is my first bed that I've ever owned.
My God.
You know, and he was 28 at the time, and I'm like, well, shit, I've had my own bed my whole life. Like,
exactly.
You know, like I just couldn't imagine being where he was from and surviving. And for me, that's the excitement. Like, that's why I do this. I do this because my goal is to help people build a platform where their children's children will still have money.
Exactly.
And they can change their lives and the lives of their communities. And they're the types of people that I'm attracted to because I want people that are going to make a difference just like I do.
Exactly.